Do you finally have the time to learn some skills that you've always wanted to try out? How about playing the drums, making pottery, painting, or even podcasting? Check out Skillshare.com. They have over 25,000 online classes to choose from. With over 600,000 students and over 8,000 teachers, Skillshare is a trusted and affordable source of knowledge which can transform your life. Go to Skillshare.com and use promo code DiveBarRockstar for a free 1-month trial, or DiveBarRockstar30 for 30% off your first year membership. Skillshare.com. Welcome to the Dive Bar Rockstar podcast, a show exploring the lives of professional musicians of all types, touring musicians, recording artists, songwriters, engineers, bar bands, wedding bands, and anyone making their living in the music industry. Whether you've dreamed of being a professional or you already are one, this is the podcast for you. I'm your host, Eric Baines, and I hope that you not only find some entertainment here, but also some helpful tips, trade secrets, and ideas that will help you achieve your dreams. Well, greetings from Atlantic City, New Jersey. I'm here with Chicago for a couple of nights at the Hard Rock, and I love it. I'm just a sucker for this kind of chaotic, crazy energy. It's a little dirty, it's a little seedy, it's a little dangerous, but it's fun. And I'm a sucker for a good casino, and there's many of them here. Plus, you got the ocean. It's like Vegas with the ocean. I mean, how do you beat that, you know? So I'm having a good time. Before we get going, I wanted to talk about a couple of new things. I have a new merch store for the Dive Bar Rockstar podcast, and that's same page on the website, divebarrockstar.com/merchandise. And there's lots of new items up there, like some coffee mugs and new hoodies and stuff. The things that were on Amazon before are still available, but there's lots of new things on the new store. So Christmas is coming. I know my wife already wants to decorate. It's Halloween day right now. Happy Halloween, by the way. And so that's happening. And also I've got on ericbaines.com a new merch store for my own, musical merch. And I started with my EP was called Try Love. And I know it's kind of an intense time to be in America right now. So I kind of thought that would be a good message to put on a t-shirt right now. So if you're into it, love and beauty and peace and stuff, maybe go check that out too at ericbaines.com and get some Try Love merch. So my guest today plays percussion and drums. Some might argue that those are the same thing, but that's beside the point. But he plays for legendary people, has played for legendary people, still does. He's had an unbelievable career playing, recording, and touring with iconic artists such as Carlos Santana, Traffic, Steve Winwood, Jackson Browne, Celia Cruz, Gloria Estefan, David Lindley, Ricky Lee Jones, Richard Marx, Sergio Mendes, Smokey Robinson, Robbie Robertson, Joe Sample, Boz Scaggs, Christina Aguilera, Ricky Martin. The list it's never ending. It's amazing. And every time I talk to this guy, he nonchalantly mentions some other legendary person that he forgot he had played with. But he also is the current drummer for the fabulous band that I also play with, Chicago. He was born in Cuba, but he grew up in Las Vegas, which is where I had the pleasure of luring him to my room for an interview. So we got to talk in his hometown, and another one of my favorites, Las Vegas. He's an incredible dude and a masterful player. He loves great whiskey and good food, as you will find out. So please enjoy my conversation with Walfredo Reyes Jr. Well, I thought I would start by saying thank you for trusting Mike O'Neill and taking his word for it when you asked for a bass player, and he said, call Eric Baines, and you did, and here I am, and it's been life-changing and amazing, and I probably have Liliana as well to thank.
Lily, yeah, and she did your show.
Yes, yeah.
Your podcast.
So I found out that other part of it where he actually called her, and she was standing next to him, so it was a team effort, I guess. but I win.
You know, it
Or we
works
all
out
win.
really good. You're the perfect choice. Great vocalist, great bass player. And, you know, like I always say, you got to be interested in doing a great job, first of all. And then the rest is, you know,
Right.
that's my whole thing is
Yeah.
on stage, off stage.
Yeah.
That's
right.
my, you know,
Right.
the hang and the playing. And that's it.
Yeah. So what is your Chicago origin story? How did you get here?
Well, you know, I knew Tres and I knew Lou.
Oh, gotcha.
And then what happened is I was with Lindsey Buckingham from 2007 to 2011, and one guy in the band got his back hurt to the point where he had titanium vertebrae replacement. It was pretty heavy, so we couldn't continue to tour. So I started freelancing. At that time, unbeknownst to me, you know, my brother Danny was playing with Zach Brown Band, but they were doing albums and he was just on salary guy.
Mhm.
And then, you know, he was still freelancing. So the percussionist that was with Chicago, Drew Hester, went, I believe, to Joe Walsh to play drums with Joe Walsh. So then they called Danny to play percussion, my brother Danny.
Gotcha.
But then he was playing percussion and then he couldn't do a bunch of engagements because he was going to go back with Zach Brown. And at that specific time, while all of this was playing out, Zach Brown asked him to be a member.
Gotcha.
So it's not just a gig anymore. It's like, okay, you're part of the band. So I came into this band, learning the show. Of course, I'm older than Danny, so I kind of like had a history with Chicago. I knew all the records.
Right.
And then it was for like a week and a half, a few shows. And I even brought the records so this guys can sign it and all that. And then basically, after the third show, Robert Lamb comes in the dressing room. He goes, "Man, we love your brother, but I understand he's with Zach Brown Band. And you sound like you've been with us forever. So if you want to hop in the bus and continue touring with us, that'll be great." And he left. And I'm going, okay. And then Tris was there and he goes like, "I think he just hired you." And that was it. So I've been with the band ever since. It's 13 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I started playing percussion and then I started playing drums in 2018.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And what was that transition like?
Well, you know, to tell you the truth, I never thought that I was going to play drums with Chicago. And it was not something that I was like, you know, I never learned the book on drums. I was just playing percussion. In fact, I moved back to Vegas. I had bought a house. I was just going to continue. And then Tris was the drummer for a long, long time. And there was a series of situations where him and Jeff Coffey resigned. And it was like sudden, and you know, it's not my story to tell, but
right.
I thought, oh my God, what a drag, because you know now they're gonna audition drummers, or I don't know if Danny Surfing will come back, or maybe Tris might come back, and you know after they do their thing, and so I know I had a gig, so whatever's happening with bass and drums, that's not my thing.
Right.
I have a steady gig and I got my house and I was just and I started going out with my wife at that time. And we were going to go to Wakatobi, Indonesia, close to Bali. And all of a sudden I'm in catering one time and Lee comes in and he goes, when will you be ready to hop on the drums? And I went, what? Like, you mean I can't hop on Tris's drums? You know, and go, well, you might have to if they split, and go, oh my God, can you try to work it out? Like, you know, this is kind of weird. And so they worked it out to where we finished the year. We did a few gigs in January, and then we started rehearsing in January for the gig in Vegas, opening the Venetian in Las Vegas. So as soon as Lee told me, well, you're going to be on drums, it was a secret I couldn't talk to anybody about it. And
Right.
so I just started learning the show on drums, which is what I tell people. It's the same highway, but on a different car.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know
yeah.
the songs,
Interesting.
but from my percussion point of view.
Right.
So it's almost
Right.
like if you had to play guitar,
Right.
and you know the
Right.
bass part, you know the songs, but now the guitar is a little different.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the way it is with drums and percussion, you know, even though they're related. And then, you know, the transition happened and we started in 2018 and that was
Never look back.
never look back. And I'll tell you one thing, the opening night, my first opening night in Vegas at the Venetian with Chicago on drum set, I got the worst flu I ever had in my life.
Oh.
And I was like so bedridden that I had muscle aches and joint aches. And my brother Danny went to get me some medication, and then I dropped a bunch of Tylenol. I had a hot shower, and I made it. I played 2 shows in a row with this flu. And I said to myself, what is it? Body over matter?
Mind over body?
Mind over body. I really, it was like that, you know, and feeding from the audience.
Yeah.
And it was a little science experiment. And I said to myself, if I can do that, I can do anything.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I played like a zombie my first 2 shows, and
yeah. And yeah, we don't get sick days.
No, you just got to make it.
The downside.
Take the meds.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just make it.
And talk to yourself in the mirror. Like I literally did that. Like, okay, I got out of the shower. I look at myself. Okay, I'm here. I can see. I can hear. I can move my arms. I feel like shit. But you're going to do it. We're going to do this, right? Wally, we're going to do this. And the mirror told me, yes. Okay.
We can do it.
Yes, together.
Oh, man. So do you have a preference? Do you like one more than the other, percussion, drums?
Well, drums, I think that is more of a important, you know, Chicago started out as 7.
Right.
With the drum set. Even though they had a lot of percussion, they overdubbed percussion, you know. And so then later on they got Luigi de Oliveira, which was before that was Sergio Mendes. And so, you know, I love percussion because it's just colors and in-betweens and moods and stuff like that. But drums is basically the responsibility of counting the tempos, you know, maintaining the tempos. And I think it has a little more weight. But with that being said, it's like, maybe this is a bad example, but drums is like the meat and potato. And you go for the restaurant, okay, you order a steak and the potato. However, the percussion is the butter, the mayonnaise, the salt and the seasonings, the parsley, you know, the chimichurri sauce, the salt or pepper.
Yeah.
All that stuff that can make the meat and potato better or worse.
Right.
So percussion can actually lift that plate to a different level. So is the seasoning around, and I'm the meat and potato. Boom, 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 meat and potato, and percussion is the, you know, that kind of thing. So, you know, they're both important.
Yeah.
So, but I never split both. I always is a family. Like to me, it's almost like if you play keyboards, okay, so sometimes you play B3, sometimes you play acoustic piano, sometimes you play clarinet. You're a guitar player, you're going to play 12 strings, you're going to play mandolin sometimes, you're going to play electric guitar.
Right.
So sometimes, you know, the different styles, but it's still guitars.
Right. Right.
So that's the thing. Percussion is a lot of sounds and part of the drum set. So arithmetology.
That's cool. And you saw Chicago as a kid, right?
Oh yeah,
like here in Vegas,
right here. We were there actually playing for Toyota the other night.
Oh,
so the history of Las Vegas, without getting into it, you know, like when I arrived in Las Vegas, I was born in Cuba, lived in Puerto Rico until I was 12. In 1969, we moved here. It was a big year. Lunar Landing.
Yeah.
And Santana and Woodstock. And I remember in Puerto Rico, open up the page and it was Michael Shreves on the drum set, with Santana. And that was a big era of music change. We moved to Las Vegas. In the Strip, it was Tuxedo. It was like Steve Martin. Dean Martin, Sinatra, Johnny Mathis, Elvis on the other side of the Strip in the Hilton. At that time, it was the International, but no hippies in town. So all the bands that were like hippie bands, which included like, Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, The Guess Who, Steely Dan, Chicago, Blood, Sweat, and Tears. I saw them all in the convention center.
Gotcha.
That's where you went to see rock concerts. And the Ice Palace, Poco, Blues Image. I saw a lot of bands in there too. So what happened is 1974, I basically went to see Chicago, and the drums were not even on a riser. Back then, it was a carpet on the floor. The drums were there, the bass player by his side. So like Cetera and Terry Kath. At that time, they had Lau G playing percussion. So, I've been following Chicago. It was my first album I bought when I was a kid, mowing lawns. I went to Jamco, and that's why Beginnings has a special place in my heart, because I heard Beginning on the radio. I was putting my little brother to bed, and I heard this song, and I went to Jamco and I bought it. There's a band called CTA. I go, CTA, Chicago Transit Authority. Oh, that's what it means. And it's the song Beginnings. Yeah, it's this record. They only have one record. Oh, okay. So I went home and played the album and loved them.
Oh, that's so cool.
So I've been listening to them since.
Right. And you told me a story too that your dad so you're a third generation percussion player. Your dad was playing in Vegas as well.
Yeah.
But he was more the jazz guy.
Yeah, he loved jazz.
You were more the rock guy.
Yeah, my dad was all around drummer, percussionist, but jazz was like their food. Tony Williams, Buddy Rich, Gene Krupa. In fact, I have a picture of my dad with Gene Krupa when they were young. First question I asked him, what were you guys up to? You look like you got busted, But, so, with that being said, I had rock music in my turntable in my room. Chicago was the first album I bought with my own money. I had Stevie Wonder, I had Cream was my second album. Abraxas was my third album. And then I got more and more into, Yes, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, more progressive stuff. But when my dad heard Chicago, and it was like, well, this is not like, Beatles and the Rolling Stone. This is like, these guys have horns and they play jazz and rock and they're rocking and classical stuff. They play some Latin stuff. So my dad came into my room and went like, man, who are they? He goes like, it's a band called CTA. He goes, that drummer's great. And so he loved Danny Serafin. He also loved Bobby Colombi from Blood, Sweat, and Tears. So then he started turning me on to his music. But I could not, was just starting to play drums. And Tony Williams with Miles Davis and Elvin Jones with Coltrane, I just didn't understand it.
Yeah.
It had to have like that rock and roll, R&B, boogaloo feel at that time, like the Beatles, blues oriented.
Right.
But the jazz I didn't understand. And it was Buddy Rich, Louis Bellson, Charles Lloyd, Jack DeJohnette. I was going, my parents are crazy. I mean, my stuff is normal. This stuff is like, what are they drinking?
Wow.
And then my mom with the syncopation of the Cuban music and all that. Sometimes you didn't know like where one was, like dancing salsa. Like my parents are definitely crazy. They listen to some deep shit, And so I thought my stuff was normal because you can go pa boom boom pa boom boom pa boom boom. Yeah, that's normal people stuff. But then the more I got into it, the more I started understanding. And of course, that's, as you know, that era was very important. And I'm very lucky that I grew up because jazz met rock and became fusion. Miles got electric. Tony Williams got more electric. The
Right.
Lifetime. It became like the fusion. Chick Corea came in the scene. You know, like fusion rock. Billy Cobham roaring. So
Right.
it was an era of like, whoa, wait a minute. You know, this is like. So
Yeah.
it was just a lot to absorb in that era.
Yeah, but so cool that your parents were like ahead of the curve versus most people's parents would be like, your stuff is crazy.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
I guess it's the benefit of having a musician as a father.
Yeah. And my dad was open, you know, I mean, he really, and at that time, of course, my dad was a drum teacher. So had like a lot of, Alex Acuna was in Puerto Rico. He's a young drummer at that time. I mean, I was a kid. And when we moved to Las Vegas, then a lot of them followed to Las Vegas and LA. So now the guy, Rudy Regalado, that played with El Chicano.
Yeah.
So that's one of the bands that I saw in the convention center because Rudy was playing with El Chicano opening for Earth, Wind and Fire.
Wow.
So I went to see them both, and they had nothing in the back except spotlights on them, nothing on the background. It's just them on stage playing.
Wow.
And it's interesting now. It's like all this production and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, you know, my dad was a student. And then by the time we moved to Vegas, some of those, like Alex Acuna was also a mentor.
Right.
To me, you know.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Who obviously he's gone on to.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I had.
went on to do amazing things.
Oh my God. So like he was here in Las Vegas, and then he actually played percussion at the Hilton when Elvis was there.
Jeez.
Alex was on Latin percussion. But then he got a call. I remember I was in school when he got a call to play with Miroslav Vitus, and he played with Miroslav Vitus, and then it was a big decision for him, you know, which it was a lesson for me later on. He chose not to stay comfortable in a steady gig, making money. He wanted to see how far he can get. So he joined Miroslav Vitus, and then he got recommended for Weather Report, and he went. But I can tell you that steady gig was like, it's difficult to leave, you know?
Yeah.
So when the time came for me to do similar things, he was in LA. All my friends were in LA. This was much later. You know, I was playing and gigging in Las Vegas. I bought a townhouse when I was like 21.
Jeez.
And I was comfortable and making money and working all the time. And I was getting calls from LA, and Alex was telling me, man, I'm recording with Dave Grusin and Steve Gadd, and you got to come. And then eventually I packed it. I packed my townhouse, rented it, and moved to LA. I had a gig with Ben Vereen, and that was going to pay my rent and all that. But you know, sometimes, as you know, we've talked about this, there's times that to get to where you want to, dreaming is not enough. Yeah, I have a dream, but what am I going to do about it? So sometimes you have to sacrifice and just go for the goal, and there's ups and downs, and you go through them all to get to the goal, you know, where you want to. Yeah.
And if you want to get to a certain level, you gotta go where the work is. You gotta go where that certain level is. You know,
and you know, that's a good point, because in those days there was no Zoom and digital computers and all that. So the work, the meaning, the centers of music was L.A., Nashville, and New York City.
Right. Which kind of still is. I mean, the digital thing, it helps. You can get known everywhere, but okay, now come to LA if you want to be in my band, or come to Nashville. You know, it still is sort of that, you know?
Yeah. And you know, Vegas is almost like now like a suburb of LA.
Right.
Because, you know, I always say to people, where do they have the big trade shows and Grammy Awards, MTV Awards, American Music Award, the Oscars? In LA.
Yeah.
Or Las Vegas, LA, or New York City, and Nashville is growing like crazy as we're talking, is growing, you know.
Right.
So Nashville is not about country anymore.
No.
It's just, you know, a lot of recording is done there. television.
Yeah.
So that's where you got to go. And I say to anybody out there, the young kids, just go for it.
Yeah.
You only live once. Try it.
Yeah. You can always move back.
You can always move back or do something else.
But it is interesting in coming from Vegas, where it's always, though, been a town where you can make a comfortable living.
Yeah.
And it still is.
Yeah.
There's still even lounge bands that you can afford to live off of out here.
Yeah. And in those days, I say this, unfortunately, because the work is diminished compared to the 70s, because every hotel had a lounge with a band or several bands.
Right.
There's more live music and more live music in the hotels. You had, the Casino de Paris, Folies Bergère, about 3 or 4 productions, and the rest was performers and musicians. And so there was a lot of work. And then, I say this, and I'm going to sound like greedy, but like once you have that thing where you been there, done that. So my goal at the beginning, when I was practicing drums and study as a teacher, and I saw Chicago and I saw all these bands, oh my God, can you imagine play for a live audience? And then I did it. Then I got hired at the MGM Lounge, and then I played percussion with Debbie Reynolds. And then I did the Top 40, and then I played in another show. And then I did the Black Guys and Dolls production show. From there, I went with Lola Falana, my first. So then once you do all of that, oh my God, I reached my goal. I'm doing my dream. Well, part 1. Now my dream is, okay, I want to go to LA and play in the studios and record records and all that. So that was a bigger dream. Right. And then eventually you do it. And it took me a long time paying dues. I moved there kind of like 1980. And I had a gig, but I was playing all these little gigs and what people didn't want. Hey, Wally, can I make a rehearsal? Can you do this for me? So I had 80, 81, 82, 83, 84 paying dues. And all of a sudden, 84, I got the gig touring with Brazilian pianist Tania Maria. And from there, touring the Asia, Europe, and United States. And then I met this bass player in the New Orleans Jazz Festival, and Jorge Calderon, and he told me, man, David Lindley's looking for a drummer that can do blues, rock, world music, reggae, ska. I go, okay. And from there, I joined David Lindley's band, which opened up more like the rock and roll. On our first gig with Lindley in 1985, Joe Walsh, Jackson Browne, Bunny Raitt sat in.
Wow.
So that was the beginning. And then, I got my relationship with Jackson Browne, and we started opening for the Grateful Dead. And then we opened for Santana and the Grateful Dead. And then I met Carlos, and that was my connection to joining him in 1989.
Gotcha.
Wow. So one thing leads to another. Right.
But it was, you had to be in LA though to get in all those circles and to be seen enough times, right? And just be there. You got to be there. It's kind of important for all those people that live in the middle of the country. Sometimes you get calls from guys back home, and you're like, hey, if there's ever an audition, I can be there in a day. And it's like,
it doesn't work like that.
It just doesn't work like that.
Sometimes it's even gigs are like, I can tell you a bunch of gigs that I've come home after going to the gym and, I'm just going to have a nice dinner. And all of a sudden it's like, I check remember the little cassette recorder. Wally, can you make it in an hour? Like our drummer got sick, and like, oh shoot, bam, there you go. Or a recording session. But the thing is, like somebody asked me this one time, man, how do you get the big gigs? And my answer was doing a million little gigs.
Oh, that's great. Wow.
That one big gig leads when you do and all the weddings, all the bar mitzvahs, all the casuals. I met great musicians, great people, I cannot tell you so many people. And then you nurture the relationships because it's all about relationships.
Right.
And, even like playing like we are with Chicago, it's all about Robert, Lee, and Jimmy. They're the bosses and our manager. And then to honor the songs. And that's what I come into each situation. Okay, we're playing a gig. You're doing a dance band. You got to make people dance. That's my job. Right. It's not showing off on the drums to the girl over there or nothing like that. So, I've always had like this work ethic that my father installed in me. In fact, we were just talking about it in the studio today, just laughing because my dad, actually, I was just doing a recording, so it was just like a Barry White kind of groove, like a and the engineer said, "Man, check this out. What happens when I shut off the overheads, but you cannot crash? It just really compacts the drums really great." And no crashes and okay, and then all of a sudden go, oh my God, and you didn't even do a tom-tom fill or anything. And I thought about when my dad told me, goes, careful with those fills because never leave the groove to show off for your own benefit and disturb the dancer. So you're going, people are dancing. Oh yeah, okay. Wait a second. Okay, I'm back to the groove. So it disturbs sometimes, Right. So I played this thing from the beginning to the end, and that's one of the things that when I heard Steve Ferroni said it, he goes, "When you think of doing a great drum fill, don't." So, with that being said, I come to each gig. It's like, okay, let's make the people dance. The song, sometimes you don't need a lot. You need a groovy beat that makes the people and the artists feel good. That's what it's all about.
But it's kind of funny that you end up in Chicago where it's sort of not about that. I mean,
right.
I think you bring that. That's kind of your contribution to your era of Chicago. But Danny was just... There's just drum fills.
Well,
the
that
whole
was
song
because that's exactly right. Because at that time, they were called a jazz rock band.
Right. And he was a big Buddy Rich fan.
Yeah, and so was Bobby Colomby, and then so was Emerson, Lake and Palmer. It was not necessarily calling it dance music, although Chicago did a lot of great tunes that were dancing music. But this guy were more progressive. They made like jazz tunes, the ballet, for God's sake.
Yeah.
It's like all over a great piece. But with that being said, that's a good point, because this happened to me with Santana also, and even Steve Winwood. I was not the original recording drummer. So when I played for all these artists, the same thing happened with Chicago. So I come in with Chicago, and I remember beginnings, the way Danny played it. And I can play all the tunes just like Danny plays it because that's where it started.
Right.
He wrote the book. And then Tris came in and put more like a dancing kind of more big beat. But the request came from the writers. And sometimes I've had Robert come to me and said, the fills and all that, don't do the fills, just play straight. And I'm going, how can I play that? I mean, Danny played all these fills and they were great. It was like, for me, it was hooks.
Right.
And by the way, I brought some of those since I started playing drums, like the beginnings. When I came into this band, that was a percussion fill.
Oh, interesting.
And I went, that sounds sacrilegious to me. I want to hear that Danny feel. So I'm doing that, and I brought a lot of Danny stuff. And then sometimes Lee and Jimmy and Robert, they've been doing this for so long, just like Carlos Santana, and they would tell me, do something different.
Yeah.
It's their band.
Yeah.
So when I get somebody out there saying, well, you're not doing exactly what Danny did, he goes, because I don't work for Danny, I don't work for you.
Right.
I work for the writer of the song, You know, so
Yeah.
that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this on purpose for the people out there, explaining, you know, that sometimes when you arrive in a band,
Yeah.
it happens to a lot of people. I know it happens even the drummer with Sting.
Mm.
So Sting played with the Police, with Stuart Copeland, which I love. I was a big fan of that band.
Right.
But the drummer, Josh, I believe, Freeze,
Oh.
I mean, he's doing all this stuff. I mean, even like Sting has the right to say, I want to hear something different.
Right.
And still honor the song, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
You do it.
Oh, absolutely.
On the bass.
Yeah, and it's kind of like you look for those little parts too sometimes where you get to throw a little you in there and where it makes sense. But I loved what you said though, like you could play everything like the record though. Because I think that's really the first place you start when you show up.
Absolutely.
Know the record back and forth.
Yeah.
Know the record better than the artist know the record.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then a lot of times, like they sent me a video of what you guys were doing now, and you learned that. And then you have yourself, and you wait, and you're patient, and you play, and you honor all that stuff, and somehow it all becomes your version.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, it does, and that's really important because remember,
But be open.
Yeah, these guys have been doing this for a long, long time, and it's 2024, and there's different rooms.
Yeah.
For example, Beginnings is a little faster than the original. That matters. You know, some of the tunes are a different tempo.
Right.
So, you know, I'm a little bit OCD, you know, like when I actually get I'm say I start with Santana. It happened to me with every group, Lindsey Buckingham, you name it. First thing I do is I notch all the tempos from the original record. And that's a lot when there's bands that have like 30 albums, you know, like Lindsey, Santana, Steve Winwood. So I listened to the original. Okay, so Give Me Some Loving. He was 17. So they're not going to do it the same way. The recording industry is different.
Right.
So now we do different versions and I notch down all the tempos. So I have files and files of tours with Steve Winwood for 10 years. This is the original tempos. This is the tour, 1994, 1997, 98, 99, 2002, 2004. And every note that he wanted to change.
Wow.
You know, Higher Love. Well, I want to do it a little faster. So you want to do it at 104? Last year we did it at 102. Okay, and the record is So, you know, you got to know that that's my job, you know, as a drummer. Because when I was with Lindsey Buckingham, for example, in a sound check, he would turn around and goes, Wally, what tempo are we doing? Go Your Own Way. I was going to go, I don't know. No, I know.
Right.
Because I count it. And it's like, okay, is this tempo? Okay, can you play it a notch faster tonight? So I play it a notch faster. Then the next night he goes, nah, put it where it was. Okay, so now we're doing it back to where it was. That's the artist.
Yeah.
But if you're a drummer that cannot do that, the artist is going to be nervous. It's like, you know, you got to own the tempos. You got to own the grooves and the styles, you know, and that's another of my thing. One is on stage, off stage, and tempos, grooves, and style. You know, tempos, the songs, the right tempo, the right groove that feels good with the band you're playing with, the song, and what style. You got to know styles.
Yeah.
You know, if you right now, Robert comes to us and says, hey man, I have this song. It's about 120 tempo and let's find a real good groove. Oh, so how's it go? By the way, it's a halftime shuffle. Okay. Or it's a bossa nova.
Right.
Or it's a swing kind of shuffle, swingy thing. Okay. Or is a Latin thing, or is a boogaloo. I mean, you got to know all these styles. You know, your playing changes. If somebody tells you it's like a cha-cha-cha groove, kind of like, oye, como va? Now you know.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
So that's really important for people that want to be in this business.
Right.
To work, if you want to work.
Right. I always say the more I can do, the more gigs I can take.
Right.
You know, so if you want to make a living.
Yeah. And you know, sometimes you know how these guys are, the artists, sometimes they don't even know what it is they want.
And me as an artist, because, you know, I just did a solo gig the other day when we had time off. And like as an artist, I know that my adrenaline gets going and I need to have the drummer know the tempo because I'm going to play with you.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I need to trust you to that. If it feels too slow, I'm not the artist who's going to turn around and be like, dude, pick it up. It's too slow.
Yeah.
No, I need you to know the tempo and play the tempo, and then
Right.
I'll come back to you because I want it to be right. But I know what happens on stage,
Right.
you know, or I'm having a bummer night and everything seems fast. You know what I mean? I just need to know that you're right, and I'll play that, and nobody has to argue about anything.
Right.
You know?
And that's a really good point right there, because especially for the younger people, I have some students when I'm off, I like to teach because I was taught.
Right.
And I learn and I appreciate my mentors. So I like to help people out. It doesn't matter the age. But, you know, sometimes I get somebody who goes, man, I was going to play this gig and I practiced all week and I was like burning in my rehearsal place. And then I got to the gig and nothing was work. I was like nervous. I was rushing the tempos and I couldn't concentrate. Well, see, like when you're in your practicing room, this air, space, and you. You don't have to share the space with anybody.
Right.
Now you got 5, 6 musicians. Even if you're in a concentrated area, for example, like with Steve Winwood, I remember we used to practice in London, and I had the click. Okay, so this song was 120 every day, and it sounded great, and people were used to it. We got on stage and 120 seemed so slow.
So slow.
Because your adrenaline and your nerves are on. And now you got your girlfriend or your wife in the audience, or, oh my God, that's like this artist that I really like. Oh, you cannot let that upset you, you know.
Right.
That's why Steve Gadd always say, just play for the song. No matter how big is the audience, how many important people are there, you know, you playing for the song. You know, and so that took years for me to learn.
Yeah, that's hard for most people.
Yeah,
you know? And I think a lot of it, you know, especially in the like weddings and stuff, like people just speed it up. You know, because they think that's what should happen. But I'm like, well, when the DJ plays that song, he's just playing that song,
right?
So what the trick is to have that energy at that lower tempo. Even though you're hyped up and want to speed up, you know, to make that lower tempo have that kind of energy.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And, you know, there is some styles of music that it's okay that it needs to speed up in certain places, like maybe at the end or, you know, some styles of music more than others. But pop music, you're going to play some things that are like trance or, you know, like a steady loop. You know, it's just got to feel good to the band and to the artist. I always say, you know, like if I started to play with Carlos Santana, it was not about what I was doing. It was about what I was doing that made him feel good. Because if he didn't feel good and he didn't play good, then I'm not the guy.
Right.
It doesn't matter how great I played.
Right.
And that's the thing. It's like, what is something that will make, you know, for example, with this band, you know, when we play some of those tunes like, you know, like Old Days and all that, it's just like it's like a dish, you know, you and I, the foundation, and then the rhythm guitar and Ray playing percussion, and then the horns coming in and out with their stabs, you know, and then the harmony comes in. And, you know, that's like a big dish. This is all great ingredients working great together at the same amount, the right amount.
Right.
Because if one of these guys, like either you, me, or anybody, overplays, then it's too much salt.
Right.
And you ruin the dish.
Yeah.
So I always think of, like, every time I go to a great gourmet restaurant, the chef is the composer. And man, like, you see this dish and it's just everything is the right amount. The right combinations of yin and yang. Yeah. And that's music right there, you know.
Are you hungry right now? This is your third time. Third time you're using a food analogy.
I know, but I use that all the time because it's so true, you know. I mean, I really love like world music, world cuisine, and then I really appreciate
Well, I usually use cheesecake, so it's the same thing. Like vocal harmonies or horn harmony. It's like cheesecake. It's great, but you don't want to eat too much. You know what I mean?
That's good too.
People want to just throw harmonies on everything. You're like, let's put them in the right place where they make an impact.
Exactly.
Let's put it at the end of the meal when you're ready for that good taste.
You'll get a stomach ache.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
'Cause I'm a dive bar rock star.
So if you are a fan of the podcast, you know that I talk often about education. I truly believe that knowledge is power, and learning has the power to transform your life. When I first started my podcast, I had no idea what I was doing. So I took an online course to learn the ins and outs of podcast production and how to build my website. So I want to tell you about this great site called Skillshare. Skillshare has over 25,000 creative classes to choose from. You can learn about things like photography, marketing, graphic design, illustration, animation, as well as podcasting and web design. You can also, though, take music classes like voice lessons, guitar lessons, piano lessons, bass lessons, music theory, songwriting, and music production. You can learn about all that stuff. With over 600,000 students and more than 8,000 teachers, Skillshare is a trusted source of knowledge on almost any creative subject that you want to learn about. Go to www.skillshare.com to start learning today. And if you use the promo code DiveBarRockstar, you can get a free 1-month trial. But we also have another amazing offer for you. If you use promo code DiveBarRockstar30, that's DiveBarRockstar30, you will get 30% off your first year annual membership. 30% off. That's huge. And it will really help out the podcast. If you're interested in taking a different career path, improving your existing skills, or just want to explore a subject that you've always dreamed about doing, check out Skillshare.com and start learning today. Skillshare.com, promo code DiveBarRockstar for a free 1-month trial, and DiveBarRockstar30 for 30% off your first year annual membership. I'd like to take a second and thank you for listening to the Dive Bar Rockstar podcast. Getting the word out is a vital part of what it takes to keep this show on the road, and the easiest way to help is to subscribe wherever you listen, and if you have an extra minute or two, please leave a review. You can also follow our page on Facebook, which is the Dive Bar Rockstar Podcast, or follow me on Instagram at Dive Bar Rockstar. Okay, enough begging. I hope you're having a great time, and once again, thank you for listening. So you mentioned Santana. So how did that come about? And it seems like that must have been a dream gig, as much as Chicago or anything.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's really weird. I don't know why, I bought my first record was Chicago. And my third record was Abraxas. And, and even back in high school when I heard Traffic, I always loved all these bands. That was the music that I love. That's why I'm playing drums. So,
right.
And I had to ask myself that question a long time ago because, you go through the left to the right, you start doing jazz and fusion and more technique. And hey, can you do a drum solo? Why the hell did I start playing drums? It was because I heard the Beatles, the Rolling Stones. I heard Chicago. That was the music that I wanted to play. So I wanted to use the drums to make music, not use music to play drums.
Oh, that's beautiful.
So it's like I wanted to be drums as a vehicle, to play with these guys, to play.
Right.
When I was with David Lindley and we were playing all over the California and the festivals, Jerry Garcia loved David Lindley. So as you know, the Grateful Dead at that time, each member of the band called a chance for the opening band. So Mickey Hart loved Olatunji, Babatunji, Drums of Passion, so they opened for the Grateful Dead. And then it was the other guy's turn, so he got Sting. And then it was Jerry Garcia's turn, so he got David Lindley.
Wow. So
we did a few festivals, like Stadium, with the Grateful Dead. And in one of them, it was David Lindley, Santana, and the Grateful Dead. Now, with Santana, Armando Peraza and Orestes Vilato were in the band, and I knew well. And I also knew Alfonso Johnson, the bass player, because I've done gigs with him in LA.
Gotcha.
So with David Lindley, I was playing timbales and percussion on my left, playing like all at the same time, playing the beat with the right hand and my feet, and then playing timbales and stuff like that. And Carlos, I remember, was on the side. And then Graham Lear and these guys did an amazing show. So then they sounded me to actually come and play with Santana. David Lindley was ready to go on a record in the studio, and I couldn't just leave him hanging.
Right.
And I asked the question, I goes, man, I saw the concert, like, you guys were killer. Why would I want to play with Santana if you have Graham Lear and all these guys? So he goes, well, just something for you to think about. And that was 1988. And then that later on that year, I went to Australia to do a tour with Jimmy Barnes from Australia. And when I came back, Alfonso Johnson called me and says, hey, man, Carlos is auditioning drummers, and he mentioned you. You want to come up and audition? And they told me to learn these 5 songs.
Mm-hmm.
And I did, and I arrived, and we didn't do any of those 5 songs. We just jammed.
Mm-hmm.
Again, different styles. So basically, Carlos started. So immediately, you do enough homework to go, that's John Lee Hooker Boogie, which ZZ Top made, like, took it and made a LaGrange song, and I went like and I heard that, and I went and so we jammed for like a half hour, and then he played something else, we jammed. So then they had a meeting, and I got the gig. So that was 1989.
Wow.
My son was born that year, Joseph.
Jeez.
And then I worked with Carlos. It was a great experience because Carlos, unlike Chicago and Lindsey Buckingham in Chicago likes to work on their set list and lock it.
Right.
Santana, you never know what's gonna come next. So he might start jamming and something and go into another song. Kind of what my daughter said that George Benson does. You got to know the whole discography.
Right.
And then George starts playing, and you know what song it is, and that's what we're going to do.
Right.
So it's not in the set list.
Right.
So he plays what he feels. So Carlos was like that, and I had 3 drum solos. 1 Soul Sacrifice, 1 with the percussionist at the end of one tune, and then I had 1 with the bass player, and I just went off. and so it was a lot of playing, a lot of.
Yeah.
And so that was really great. And then
Did he give you like room to do your thing on there?
Yeah,
or was he particular about what he wanted you to do on those?
Both. He will come and say, I want to try this over here or do this over there. But then he wanted me to. Carlos was more like, he doesn't like the tunes to sound the same all night, every night. So there's always a push for do something different.
Wow,
that comes from his jazz miles.
Right.
Like, let's try to do something different that we didn't do last night.
Right.
Which is kind of like the Grateful Dead, Fish, the whole jam band thing.
Right.
With Chicago, Lindsey is, and even Steve Winwood, we lock it. This works really well, and we do this.
Right.
And so, but with Carlos, I work, great musicians, great bands. It was like getting paid to go to school, really. And then in 1994, I got called to do the Traffic tour with Steve Winwood and Jim Capaldi, which we opened for the Grateful Dead. Again, 11 stadium shows.
Wow.
And Woodstock, 94. But I was playing percussion. Jim Capaldi was playing drums. And then sometimes Jim would come and play percussion, and I would play drums.
Oh, wow.
So it was a lot of fun.
That's cool.
And all the Traffic band was great musicians. It's a little more quieter. We didn't, like, Santana was louder. Traffic was just more like, almost like a room studio level.
Wow.
Like, I didn't even have anything on my monitors.
And you were playing stadiums?
We're playing stadiums.
Jeez.
Yeah.
That's hard to do.
Yeah. So these guys played not loud. And so I had congas on my monitor, but I can almost hear Steve's piano, the drums on my right,
That's
naturally.
cool.
So
I love that.
Yeah, and Steve actually works like that because later on I did Steve Winwood's from 1997 and to 2004, and he likes it like that. He likes it more like on stage, not be far away and close to each other.
Yeah.
And if you can hear each other without monitors, the rest is gravy.
Oh, that's cool.
But since 97 with Steve Winwood, that's when I started doing the in-ear monitor.
Oh, okay.
And I got used to that, and that really helped a lot with the sound. With nothing is feeding into the drum mics. The monitor is not feeding.
Right.
You know, so if you want like loud vocals, you want a lot of guitar so you can hear, it's coming into your overheads.
Right.
But if you're in the drum set and all of a sudden you put in-ears, only drums are going into your microphone as a cleaner sound.
Yeah.
So I learned that.
I thought about that.
You know, so it was just great experience. You know, I've been very lucky, one after the other.
Yeah.
You know, Robbie Robertson, 95 after the Traffic tour. And then 97, 98, 99 with Steve Winwood. Johnny Holiday, 2000. I also worked Boss Cags and Gloria Estefan in between Santana.
Jeez.
But, you know, it was like, you know, what happens, I guess, this is before the cell phone and websites and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's all a matter of when you're on stage, you're doing the best job so people are listening to you speak music language, right? And if you do the best job you can, it's going to feel good and people are going to like, oh my God, I love that drummer, you know, what he did with his band. Then the minute you get off stage, you got to be the best human you can. And it's all about friendships and relationships and nurture them. You know, when you're off, it's like you call your buddy, say, man, can we get together? Or like, hey man, I saw you play, blah, blah, blah. It's called networking, making friendships.
Yeah.
And just like the word says it, play music, not work music. So, hey man, you want to play? Get together and play? Oh man, yeah, you know, let's do it. And you know, sometimes you gotta go out of your comfort spot. And some people call it jamming. Some people call it let's write something together. Sometimes let's work on a song. Whatever it is, it's got to be let's make music.
Right.
When you're not on tour, when you're not, and you know, this generation now, including me, sometimes I play by myself in my studio with the loops and stuff like that. But you know, I come from an era where that didn't exist.
Right.
Even a demo had to be done by humans. So you had to play with people all the time to create any music.
Yeah.
Now, you know, I'm at fault. You know, I go in and do some bass loops and some chords and percussion loops, and then I'm playing and I'm making music. You know, it's not the same.
Yeah.
You know,
Definitely.
I mean, you do it.
Yeah.
I know you.
I know. I mean, I've spent, I spend hours in the studio just making stuff all by myself, playing every instrument, instrumental stuff or whatever. And it's not the same satisfaction when you're done. You get done and you're fried versus you get done with a good session with everybody there and you're jazzed.
It's lifting.
You go up.
Yeah, because there's something, and today, you know, my friend Pat Caddick in this studio, even though we've been doing this, I've been sending the drum tracks from where I live in the Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky area to him here. He goes, oh no, you're going to be we're going to get together in the studio. And it's a different thing when you're there together, communication wise.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're smelling each other's sweat. And you're like, you know, when you hear the stuff coming through the speaker, you go, I smell the sweat. I mean, you know, you hear
and you're inspiring each other. Like you get fed by each other's thing. It's like, you know, it's just a totally different experience. Especially like my last like EP that I made, which I want to get to your solo music after this. But my last EP is like mostly me on it. So even listening back is not that enjoyable. It's all me. But like a couple of records ago, my reinvention was mostly everybody else. It was just I just played bass and some guitar and sang and wrote songs, but everyone else is playing. It's like I like listening to that because
Right.
oh, listen to that guy play that thing. That's cool. And it's just not the same when a computer is playing it or if you're doing it all. It's not as enjoyable for me to listen to.
Yeah,
I mean?
it's a magic that happens, even if it is your idea, your song.
Right.
But it just from nothing.
Yeah.
It's this magic of tonalities and harmonies and grooves, and all of a sudden it's like sometimes I cannot even control it.
Yeah.
It's just happening, and it's like, what is this?
Yeah.
And
that used to be called a hit record.
It's a hit record. Oh my God. But yeah, it's just beautiful when I was telling you earlier, one of the reasons that I push myself, somebody sent me an email one time that at the bottom said, most musicians go to their graves with their music still inside.
Oh, wow.
And that really affected me because I know a few that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Family of mine and friends. And tomorrow never came.
Yeah.
And they were not done. So while you're alive and you can, I want to put it out there in the world. And then when I go to my grave, I want to be on empty. There's nothing. I'm sorry, God, but I ain't going to bring nothing to heaven. There's enough music, I'm sure, in heaven with all these dudes, right? Rock and roll heaven. But, I just want to go on empty. And I got a lot of stuff still that unfinished.
Well, speaking of that, so you've got 2 solo albums on Spotify. And this is the greatest part about Spotify, in my opinion. It's not great. It kind of screws everybody monetarily. But now you put out a record. Back in the day, you put out a record, it's in the record store till it's sold out, and then it's done forever.
Yeah.
Now you got to go find it somewhere. Now it's on Spotify forever. So you can talk about anything as if it's current because it's there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the mediums are, YouTube, Spotify, and I'm sure there's more.
Yeah. Apple Music.
Yeah,
Rhapsody,
Apple Music.
Tidal,
Yeah.
It's endless at this point. But so Wally World is on Spotify and everywhere, I'm sure. So it's so well recorded. So was that all together in a studio, or is that kind of...
No.
And where did you record that?
Well, Wally World was an extension to my DVD called Global Beats. So I have an instructional DVD that was really crazy how it happened because I had a band, and I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but I had a band. I had Hal Leonard said, let's do this DVD, Global Beats. I had the idea of different grooves. It's not it's not teaching you how to play bass drum fast. Mm-hmm. It's about different grooves that are from different countries that you can apply with pop music and everything. But, it's just one from Brazil, another one from Africa, the other one from Cuba, New York. And, so I started doing that DVD. And finally, I got a band together. We wrote like 7 different pieces. My friend and I, the late Roger Byrne, and he helped me get these pieces together. So now we did the DVD, but it was not recorded how I really, really wanted to hear the tunes, because it was like, these were the guys that did a great job. We rehearsed one time. They were still reading the music on the DVD. And I played, and then I explained the grooves. And then what happened is I talked to Roger, and unfortunately, my friend that composed him and I all these little tunes. And I said, man, I want to really, really do a CD, like really record it well. And so we started doing it, and he got kidney cancer. And he was very weak at the end. He almost, I don't think he even could play only on one tune. And then I had the music just sitting there. So I did go to the studio with Roger, Jimmy Haslip. We barter on projects. So it was the trio. It was like Roger, Jimmy Haslip, and me. We cut the foundation of some of these tunes. And then Roger got sick and it just sat there. So I remember, I think it was about 2008 or 2009. You know how people tell you, what's your New Year's resolution? And I says, well, keep on working and paying bills and staying healthy and all that. But I got up out of the bed the first January 1st, and I just heard like this voice. It must have been my brain, or I don't know. It was kind of spooky, but the voice said, finish what you started. That was the voice.
That's cool.
And then I thought about it, and it goes like, well, why? What is that? Like, what haven't I not finished?
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the music. I got it in the can. So I started talking to different friends of mine. One of them was Michael O'Neill.
Wow.
And Michael goes, Wally, send me the track. I goes, okay. And so I sent him the track. Then he recorded the guitar on the first track of the Arequita, which was a Venezuelan kind of funky New Orleans kind of groove. And then Matt Rohde played the B3 and from his house.
Oh, wow.
And then the first tune was done. And then Michael Thompson helped me with the second tune in the same way. I took it over there and he laid the guitars.
That's Abacuando.
Abacuando.
Yeah.
And then
that, does that mean in some other language, where's the one?
No. Abacuando is Abacua rhythm. It's a 6/8 rhythm.
Gotcha.
That tune, believe it or not, is all in 4. But, so it's like a 6/8 kind of thing. And then, I had this other tune. It was a Brazilian thing. So I took it to Katia Moraes, Brazilian singer in LA. And then I went to Kevin Ricard, helped me with the percussion on that one. So I went to everybody's studio. I didn't have a studio.
Gotcha.
So I went everywhere and did a lot of stuff, and on and on and on. And it's like a trip around the world. And the last track ends in India. So you go to Africa, China, Caribbean, everywhere. Like the idea of the CD is close your eyes, put it on, and you're traveling around the world.
Wow, that's cool.
Then for the second one, basically, on my time off when I was on the road with Chicago, working a lot, I was playing percussion. But then I was playing drums when I arrived in LA. I had this kicks band that, man, they play like all the different styles. Manny, Joey Navarro on keyboards, Eno, great percussionist and singer from Cuba, and Mario Quiroga on guitar. So like these guys played like every style you can imagine. So I decided to hop on their music, on their top 40 music.
Mm-hmm.
Goes, hey man, I love all these tunes that you guys do. Like, we want to do a gig. And he goes, yeah. So I got a gig at the Baked Potato. In LA, with the traffic, you can't rehearse a lot.
Right.
If the gig pays like say $200, that's for that night.
Right.
I don't want to get this guy's like rehearsing for a week for $200.
Yeah.
So I told him, let's do this tune and this tune and this tune, and I'll see you in the downbeat. Kind of like what Chicago does. And
right.
So that's what we did, and a few times at the Baked Potato, and we did some other gigs. All of a sudden, I was going to play the Baked Potato, and a friend of mine that was doing sound at the Baked Potato, he goes, Wally, you know that we have a Pro Tools system at the Baked Potato, and if you, for $350, you can do the gig, but I can record you in Pro Tools.
Wow.
I said, well, let's do it. And that was the second CD.
That's cool.
Not every song made it. Unfortunately, I had a Southern California Purple there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Joey just couldn't do the horns and the B3 part at the same time well. So, I couldn't put it on. And
Right.
but it came out really well. Now, with that being said, when you listen to those two CDs, if it wasn't for Johnny Silas Cranfield, it wouldn't sound like that. I mean, that guy knows how to record and mix, and he took things and cleaned them up, and so the sound is amazing.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah, so that's Johnny Silas Cranfield.
I had to like fast forward to the end to see if people clapped to be like, is this really live?
And it was.
And they did.
And then, you know, the funny thing, the last tune, and this is something that I hope Mario doesn't mind, but when I started the night, you know, of course, the first set is more packed. The first tune of the CD is the first tune that we played. The last tune is a Led Zeppelin tune. There was less people, more bluesy. And I didn't know this, but Mario's mother died right before we played that gig.
Jeez.
And he got the phone call and he was holding it. So when you listen to that CD,
gosh.
Since I've Been Loving You,
I listened to it. Yeah.
listen to the guitar and he's shedding tears.
Wow.
I mean, I didn't know this until afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I started mixing it, I went like, damn, you know, that's so it's really heartfelt, you know, that song and the CD.
Been working from 7 to 11 every night.
And then, you know, I'm trying to always to do different things. So as you know, I got those two CDs and it's fun to play covers. The second CD is just covers, nothing original. But it went so well because people loved the tunes, the familiarity. So when I moved, I met my wife and I moved from LA to Las Vegas. And then I met her and we went to Cincinnati where she lives and she's from. And I decided, yeah, I'm going to live with her. And then I rented my house. Then I started in the new city. I'm on the road with Chicago all the time. So we were living there in Cincinnati, which I love, and a lot of great musicians. And during the pandemic, I met these guys that I did some percussion tracks, and they're monsters, the fusion track. So I got the bass player and the keyboard player and to do some gigs. And similar situation happened. So now, okay, let's do this gig at this pub. Okay, so what are we going to do? I don't know. What tunes do you guys know? It goes, well, we can do this, we can do that. And it was all cover tunes. One Herbie Hancock tune, another Chick Corea tune, a Stevie Wonder tune, a Michael Jackson tune as a trio. Keyboard, bass, and drums. Yeah. And we started getting all these tunes together, Brazilian tunes, Sergio Mendes. And all of a sudden I go, let's start recording this. It's tunes we love. So I almost got a CD almost ready.
Wow, that's great.
So I got about 7 tunes ready. Probably need about 2 or 3 more. And I think, I don't know, I'm going to put it out as a CD or I'm still...
Or just digital now.
Digital.
You know.
Downloads. I like to have CDs to sign.
Yeah, right.
If I do
People like merch.
Yeah, live gigs. But it's just so cool. And we recorded as a trio. And... yeah, so that's, you know, we've done some festivals already. And, you know, because, you know, one thing that I tell my own kids and like my daughter, which, as you know, is a singer with George Benson.
Mhm.
And what happens, like now, George is retired from touring.
Right.
He's not retired, but he's still making music, and
Mhm.
but never put all your eggs in one basket. So I learned this long time ago. Even when I was with Santana, Armando Perasta used to say, "You got to do your thing."
Yeah.
I mean, you're an artist
Right.
working for Santana.
Right.
Santana music is Santana's music, and you're part of it. And when, like with Chicago, when the car drops me at my house, I represent Chicago since the car picks me up and we tour, off stage, on stage. I represent Chicago, treating people nice at the hotel and the restaurant. I am yours. When the car drops me back in the house, I'm back to Walfredo Reyes Jr. and I'm a freelancer.
Right.
So I either teach or do a clinic or do a gig with somebody else or, do my thing or record, and I don't know about you, but I find that it's very refreshing for me, and it makes my gig with Chicago better. Because when I come back to the Chicago gig, not only am I in shape,
right,
I haven't been sitting down waiting for Chicago.
Right.
I am in shape mentally, physically, and musically, and I bring more energy, you know.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that's what we're here to do, is make music.
Exactly.
And a lot of times, like I've talked about this on other episodes, how like you almost have to, when you're younger, it's worse. But if you're on the bandstand with an artist and you've got opinions about how you think their music should go, that can go really horribly wrong. So it's like, you know what? Save that for your band. And you need to have a band, and you need to write your own music, and you need to have an outlet for all those opinions that you have, because at the end of the day, there's 3, maybe 4 in our group that make those decisions, and you don't. You know what I mean?
Absolutely right.
You're going to come back to the gig better, with a better head, if you have a place to put all that stuff, and then you're going to be like, hey, whatever you want, man.
Man, and you actually touched a point that is kind of funny, because when I told this story in bus number 2, Chicago, Jason Sheff just ran with it. And it became like the theme. So I told him the story when I was really young, playing percussion with Debbie Reynolds behind my dad. My dad was in front of me and I was behind playing percussion. But there was only like about 2 tunes that really needed congas and Latin percussion. And of course I was 16, so like I was immature, still developing my musical instrument techniques and all that. And I was bored, and so like I started playing, and so when they were playing like, 2-step, like me and my shadow, I was playing, and man, they had like a little break, and my dad turned around like a Rottweiler and went, "Hey, right now, you play what you need to play. When you get your own damn band, then you play what you want to play. Is that understood?" And I said, "Yes, sir." "Is that understood?" "Yes." And then he turned around and the show continued. Man, Jason was on the floor laughing. So like now, since he was in the band for 30 something years, and sometimes we got on the bus and we go, "Oh, I don't know, we should do this like this. I wonder if I should play, I'm playing this, but, and you always trying to and Jason turned around and goes, remember what remember what Wally's dad said, you do what you need to play. You
play what you need to play.
That's it. When you get your band,
that's funny.
Experiment. So that's why it's a really good point, because in sessions, I may have other ideas, but, very, very diplomatically, you might bring something, or maybe they might ask you. Sometimes they ask you, sometimes they don't ask you.
Right.
You're there because they cannot play drums, but they have the idea.
Yeah.
And you're there for service. I mean, that word, I never down on me that's what we do, but...
I've likened it to an assembly line sometimes.
Exactly.
Like I just go to work and I play what I'm told to play,
That's it.
and I have to derive some sort of joy from that,
Right.
And
And
when I get
that's-
off the stage and I haven't made any mistakes and everyone's happy, then I did my job. I'm
You did your
amazing,
job. Exactly. If you watch the Motown documentary, Barry Gordy used to work at Ford.
Oh,
And he
interesting.
created
Yeah.
Motown as an assembly line,
Right.
and everybody had a job to do.
Mm.
And music was the ultimate hit record.
Right.
Hitsville, right?
Right.
So the same thing, that was a very good thing. So basically you're of service, and if the guys are happy, then you feel it and everybody's happy and the audience is happy. You're doing your job. Now, would I play some tune a little different? Maybe.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to experiment with their music. Remember, I play drums. I don't use music to play drums. I'm not going to use Chicago's music
Right.
to spray all over my ideas.
Right.
That's unprofessional.
Right.
And unfortunately, it's happening a lot because now you can take the app voices and take out the drums and spray all over the tunes that are hits already.
Right.
And the other day, there was this kid that was spraying all over Billie Jean. Now, Undugu play like Billie Jean, and that's why that song is a hit. Is this steady groove? Ooh, So what does the drummer do? Oh, I don't want to do that. But there's a tempo already. He didn't create it.
Right.
He's not contributing to the groove because the groove is already there by Undugu.
Right.
And you heard it and you bought the record. But now I can spray all over.
Right.
Because somebody's doing the job.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do that at home if you want to experiment. Like you can put ketchup on your mashed potatoes or chocolate milk on your cornflakes.
Yeah.
That's a personal thing. But, you do that at home.
Right.
Not on other people's music live,
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's there's different subjects that I'm glad that we're talking about it, because in the indirect way, I get asked questions like this sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How do you get the big gig?
Right.
Oh,
yeah.
Doing a lot of little gigs the right way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of service.
Yeah.
Do your job, play for the music, and always play like it's your last day on earth.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, my last question was going to be, your career has spanned like 6 decades,
Yeah, man. This is my 52nd year playing professional.
But in you started in the 60s.
Yeah.
We're in the 24s now.
Well, actually, I started practicing, studying in the 1969.
Gotcha.
And then, I was in the 10th grade in high school. I started getting in the union, musicians union. Mm-hmm. And, shows. My thing was just to play every style.
Yeah.
And
because that's what I was going to say. What is it what's the most important thing to do or to think about to keep a career going that long?
Well, it's
because you're still going.
Let's talk about music.
And you've got lots of followers on Instagram. You're not like this old guy who doesn't work anymore. Like you're still in it. That's what's amazing.
Well, let's go back to the food thing. No, I noticed that when I go to a restaurant that is successful, there's a chef that can bend the menu, and you have your son with you, and you're ordering a vegetarian Spanish paella, and your wife wants like a spaghetti this style, and your son doesn't care about that, and he wants a hot dog or a pizza, and the guy goes, I can do that, because if your son has to actually eat too, and if your son wants something and he can give it, he can make you happy, your wife happy, and everybody. Yeah. So that means that the guy's diverse and knows a lot of different styles.
Right.
So that's the key. So Baskin and Robbins, I remember it was like, 21 flavors? Not anymore. They're like 45 or 60.
Right. It's 31, I think.
And when my little Gabriel was little, he's now like 29, but he always wanted that bubble gum. in Maine, they make it for the kids, and then the older people want the salty caramel.
Yeah.
They have a flavor for everybody, and they're making money. So, like, if you want to make money, you cannot, somebody goes, hey, man, can you do this? Can you do that? My answer was always, okay,
Yeah.
sure, okay. Lindsey Buckingham was a challenge going in, and he said, you're not going to play drum set all night long, are you? He goes, what do you mean? He goes, well, I want different sounds and for different tunes. So I want different drum set sounds. He goes,
Wow.
so I had to go to the Roland TD and program 13 drum sets
Wow.
with the sound guy. So song number 1 was this sounding drum set. Song number 2 was more of a bigger rock sound. Song number 3 was more percussive. It took a lot of work, but that's what he wanted. And when I gave him what he wanted, I was it. I mean, I was the guy. And
Right.
so he continuously called me back, and I earned his trust. So that's what I do with everybody. I mean, everybody. You know, it doesn't matter. You don't have to be famous, whatever. You know,
Right.
we work
Right.
for the same, the writer, you know, and anybody, and help.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes there's
Right.
people that know what they want, and sometimes they're asking you for help.
Yep.
And
Sometimes you're an interpreter.
exactly, an interpreter.
Yeah.
Sometimes they ask you, what would you put here? And you say, okay, I will do this. And sometimes they're telling you what to
Right.
put.
Right.
I want this exactly. And I go, okay.
Yeah.
You know, so basically you're like in a job that is of service for the people that are paying you money. But it's not just materialistically like money, and you know, you're helping somebody with their vision.
Right.
Because,
Right.
you know, every artist has the right to have a vision, whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
Is their vision. If you see that they're making a mistake, and sometimes you see it, you go like, well, I'm going to try this. And you go, oh, that's not going to work, but what the hell? And they go, and after an hour, they come back and go, man, let's try that other thing that you were talking about. And goes, okay, yeah.
Right.
You know, you got to be patient and compassionate, and all these manners that you are taught and you teach your kids, what do you call it, off stage, they actually matter on stage, because when dynamics is compassion, consideration. So when you're actually playing an intro and I see the singer going into the mic, it's like, shh, calm down. What do they have to say?
Right.
And then the singer sings. Then the guitar player has something to say. You know, so it's
Yeah.
like compassion. And if somebody makes a mistake, which we all do, we're all humans, forgive quickly.
Right.
I mean,
That's nice.
the night is not done just because something bad happens.
Right.
Technical things happen. The other night, you know, we had a technical glitch. Forgive. The guy was
Yeah.
embarrassed, felt bad. I was not going to make him feel worse.
Right.
But I said, well, how can we work it out so it doesn't happen again?
Right.
What's the solution? And then, oh man, it'll never happen again. Don't worry. It goes, okay. But he's a human being and I'm a human being.
Right.
And so not every day is great. You know, so like that's why that's my thing. Be the greatest musician with manners on stage.
Yeah.
Take those manners off the stage. Treat people right, kind. And, you know, and then when Chicago leaves town, they go, man, we had the band here. Oh my God, they're the nicest guy. Can't wait till they come back.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
And on stage, off stage, and yeah, we need all that in the world.
Well, you definitely embody that. I witness it every day. You've been extremely kind to me.
Well, thank you.
It's,
Well, you're doing an amazing job, and I knew
Thank you.
when Michael O'Neill told me, man, this is the guy you need. Is a great singer, great hang, you know, and knows all the styles. Because I don't even know what you did with him musically in the past, but when Michael is a rhythm guy,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
great rhythm guitar player, work a lot with him. And so when he recommends that, you know, it's like, okay, I believe him.
Yeah.
I mean, he's working with my daughter, and
Right,
he
right.
helps out with my daughter.
Right,
You know,
right.
He's a father, a guy that is working for George forever,
Yeah.
and there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
He's of service to George,
Right.
and I know
Mhm.
that. So when Michael is serious about his job and he goes, I will get this guy, and I go, then I looked you up. We talked on the phone, and I knew that it was going to be great because as soon as you came in, this is the job: A, B, C, D, E. Okay, see you in the downbeat.
Right, exactly.
And it sounded great the
I was
first night.
I was lucky to get like 4 songs on a sound check, so not everybody gets that. But it's yeah. I mean, I was, I guess I shouldn't say surprised, but and I've said it numerous times. It's like everything that I do, I get to do on this gig. Like whoever, like I just fit. You know what I mean? And to some degree, that's kind of luck. But at the same time, it's also lots of experience and lots of listening and but.
Well, something that Lee told me, because he's concentrating on his part, man. That guy practices every day.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're like in their 70s and playing this music like that every night. So he practices. He goes, I can't babysit people. It's not my job. I don't want that job.
Yeah.
So I just want to play my part and know that everybody's playing their part. And then the reaction is the audience, and you hear it in the air.
Yeah.
You feel it. It feels good.
Yeah.
When we have like a break, people say, "Do you get tired of doing these songs?" I don't get tired of playing great songs, and these songs are all great.
Yeah.
And so we do our jobs, and everybody does the ingredients that they need.
That is interesting you bring that up, because like sometimes I do think, like, I'll go through a whole show and just think I'm up here alone. I'm not, I'm listening subconsciously to everything I need to, but the other job for the people up front too, especially, is just like, is the crowd. So I could go a whole show and not look at Neil or barely look at Lee, because I'm looking at them and I'm thinking about my part.
Right.
And it's kind of okay. You know what I mean? It's sort of what everybody needs to do to make the overall show banging. It's not really, no one's, there to save you but at the same time, no one's going to beat you up if you screw up. It's not like, it's a great, but we're also just great musicians. We don't screw up very often.
No, I mean, and if we do, I mean, we go like make sure that this doesn't happen again. And why did it happen?
Right.
Sometimes that has happened to me, and
but it's a team, but it's also sort of a team of individuals that are all out here with the same goal in mind, which is just wow that crowd.
Exactly.
Get them where we need to get them.
Yeah.
And even if you never look at me, I don't care. Look at them. It's all about them.
Yeah, and that's why we're talking today. Like, even with my own little band, the trio, and even the band from my second CD, my thing is no music stands, because I've been on stage, I've been on the audience where I cannot even see the drummer or see the band because a horn player has the music stand and is blocking me, it's blocking my view. Then the guy is playing to the music stand, not to the people.
Right.
And I understand at some point you do need music stands and need to read the music and all that. But I've gotten so used to the energy of like, I want to learn the song really well and either close my eyes and dig it, or open my eyes and exchange the feeling with the band and the audience.
Right.
And that's what we're here about, exchanging energy. Right. Because music it's all about energy, the energy of the crowd. That's one thing I miss when I'm playing in my little studio by myself. I miss that, playing this, but that's why the pandemic was so crazy. Yeah. Being in the same room locked up.
Right.
And it's like when we started playing live again, it was like, oh my God, I took it for granted. The audience.
Yeah.
It's like,
right.
Yeah. So, we're all in this together. And we're all in this together. And we are.
Yeah, well, thank you for coming to my room in your hometown.
Yes.
And literally looking at the strip from here, and it's pretty amazing. It's one of my favorite towns too. But
I mean, right now I'm watching from here the Allegiant Stadium.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that looks like a UFO just landed.
I know.
Yeah, it's
crazy,
great too.
man.
Vegas is like everything, it's a changing world. This town is so huge right now.
Yeah.
I saw some friends of mine the other night, Santa Fe, every Monday night. And every time I see them, they're just like, oh my God, just like blow me away.
Yeah.
So, it's just a lot of great memories in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And
Well, thanks for making another one with me.
yes, and I'm honored to be here, and I love your podcast and all the guys
thanks,
that you
man.
have, including my daughter and all the musicians you've had.
Yeah.
It's a learning experience, actually.
Oh man. Well, that's why I love doing it too. I mean, obviously I knew it would be. I wanted it, but it's just been such it's great to get to know people. It's great to be able to get back in touch with people, you know what I mean? And just get everybody's stories, because as much as there's definitely a through line, everyone has their own experience at the same time, So, and you can learn from any of them.
Exactly. And it's so interesting. And then that's what you put into your music,
Yeah.
your story.
Yeah. I was going to say that earlier when you were talking about politeness and dynamics and everything. I've always said too, it's like how people are off stage are how they are on stage. And if, that's been my experience over 30 years of doing it.
That's true.
Like, if I don't like you off stage, I'm not going to enjoy playing with you.
Yeah, because, sometimes it gets like, your selfishness. Some people, I've seen them, like we're playing music and like see the drummer doesn't come down I mean, there's a singer and he's not even concerned. So, there's a quote that I leave you with. And this is something that I actually have to ask Steve Gadd when he said it for real, but I heard it was a Steve Gadd quote when they asked him, what advice would you give to younger people coming up in the music business, especially the drummers? And he says, well, to the drummers, remember, there is life past the cymbals. And that was so deep because it's so easy. We got a set that is pretty big, even a three-piece kit. It's not just like a tambourine or a horn, it's like
right.
4 or 5 and then cymbals and stuff like that. So it's a real estate.
Right.
So you spend you're looking at your snare and then your hi-hat, and I'm going to hit this cymbal over here. Then I'm back to the hi-hat and the floor tom, make sure that the fill. So you're into this real estate and forgot that there's a bass player on your left, there's a singer, there's an audience. The B3 is just about to take a solo, or a saxophone player. And basically what you're doing affects them. So you got to be in tune with them, the whole band and the audience. And there is life past the cymbals. And you're part of it. You're affecting that whole thing. So don't get buried behind your drum set and drum technique and all about drums and the drumming world. And it's all of that. But the reason you're playing drums is use them as a vehicle to create music. Yeah. And that's about it.
Well, that's plenty. Now I'm hungry.
I know a really good spot down there.
All right, man. Well, thanks for coming.
All right. Well, thank you for having me.
Man, I can't tell you how much of a privilege it is to be out on the road with this guy all of the time. He's a really, really great guy. I mean, as well as being, a world-class drummer, but it's kind of all of Chicago too. It's been a really special experience because these guys are all really great guys as well as being really great musicians. And that's, I hate to say it, but it's kind of rare in this business. So I feel very grateful. He's a very deep dude, and it's awesome being on the bus and getting to hear all his stories all the time. It's pretty amazing. And I loved when he talked about tempo, because it took me by surprise the first time I was in a studio with an artist that I was playing for. And he spent about 45 minutes trying to decide on the tempo of the song. And we're talking about 2 BPM, like back and forth. Like, that's such a small change, but some artists are super sensitive to tempo, and that can make all the difference in it, and it's really important. So as a drummer, to show up knowing the tempos is just so important. It's much more important than you think. You can't just, just making the song feel good, that's one thing, and it needs to feel good at any tempo, but for you to know and to have done your homework can make the difference between getting a gig and not getting a gig. He also mentioned Rudy Regalado, who's an amazing timbale player for the band El Chicano, and we both got to play with him. That's another kind of cool thing that me and Wally have in common, that we both were members, or, played for. I don't know about members, but I spent a summer playing with El Chicano with a lot of the original guys Bobby Espinoza and those guys, and Jerry Salas, who wasn't original, but he's kind of the main singer that did all the hits, and another great band of great guys, and it was a really, really fun summer for me, and Wally played with them for a couple of years, so it's kind of cool to have that in common. So Baskin Robbins actually has 1,400 flavors in its library currently. He was so right about that. I was kind of shocked. It was originally known for 31 flavors when the company was formed in 1948. But since then, it's just 1,400 flavors. I just can't even believe it. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode and this conversation. I sure did. And I hope you come back for more. I'm hoping to do more next year, probably. Tell you the truth, I'm probably not going to have time to get to another one before the end of the year, but you never know. I don't know. I've got some stuff up my sleeve. We got some great guests lined up, but it might be January until something happens. But so I hope you have some great holidays and a great new year. And if I don't see you before, then I'll see you in the new year, 2025. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be a big year. I have good feelings. All right. Have fun. I'll talk at you next time.
I'm a dive bar rock star.
Wow, you've made it to the end. I'm hoping it's because you completely enjoyed yourself and are now filled with knowledge and inspiration to move forward with your dreams. If that is the case and you would like to stay informed of new episodes, live events, and general news, please go to divebarrockstar.com and sign up for the mailing list. If you have any questions, comments, corrections, or complaints about anything you hear on the show, please email me at fanmail@divebarrockstar.com, and you may even end up on the show. We at the Dive Bar Rockstar podcast, with all of our hearts, thank you for listening, and remember, it's all about dreams.